The imperial gardens are noteworthy for their grand dimensions, luxurious buildings, and exquisite decorations. In northern China, Beijing is one of the better-known areas of these beautiful gardens. Summer Palace is a typical example. Partially influenced by the gardens in the south, such as the West Lake in Hangzhou, Summer Palace radiates fully the natural beauty and the grandeur of royal gardens, composed mainly of Longevity Hill and the Kunming Lake. It incorporates the idea of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism in the layout of natural landscape and the man-made scenery and architectures. For example, the 3 islands in the lake symbolize the 3 fairy islands in Tao legends. The temples in Longevity Hills are arranged in a clear hierarchy and a layout that represent the world in Buddhism classics. Most delicate palaces, pavilions, and temples are well preserved, and it's easy to appreciate the high-level craftsmanship as you go through the magnificent garden. Southern China garden architecture. Classical gardens of Suzhou. The gardens in the south are smaller but no less exquisite. The area in South China is rich in water resources and yet limited in land area because the hills are the dominant feature here. As a result, designers make full use of every acre of land, creating spaces and views in unexpected places. There's no fixed rule for designing the garden. The common practice is to blend in and be inspired by the law of nature. In most southern gardens, no matter big or small, you could see pavilions and terraces made of natural stone. Towers, corridors, and buildings are of white wall and dark gray tiles. Jiangsu province boasts with many famous examples which have been added to the UNESCO World Heritage List. These gardens, more than 50 of them, were all private ones with a long history, being largely renovated in Ming and Qing dynasties. They lend insight into how Chinese intellectuals harmonized their aesthetic taste in the reclusion within an urban living environment. The monumental ensemble has been influenced by the traditional Chinese paintings, carrying the wisdom and the remnants of philosophy, literature, art, and craftsmanship. And the artistic heritage has also been reflected in modern architectures. Having spent his most cherished childhood memories in the Lion Grove Garden, Pei Li-ming, a most celebrated architect of our time, often spoke of how he was influenced and inspired by the gardens of Suzhou and harmonious interpersonal relationship in the neighborhoods. One of his last designs, the new Suzhou Museum, brought together the geometric visualization in modern architecture and the exquisite structure realized by Chinese garden style, reaching a balance between the past and the future, merging the Chinese and the Western languages in design. Sitting adjacent to groups of famous gardens, such as the humble administrator's garden, it becomes an enriched symbol of art complex. Architects and the brief history of Chinese architecture. Brief history. In the history of Chinese architecture, there has been a famous book connecting the architects in the ancient and modern China, 营造法式, or the Treatise on Architectural Methods, or State Building Standards. It was the oldest Chinese technical manual on building compiled by Li Jie in Song Dynasty, published in 1103. The influence of the book spanned many dynasties, and in Qing dynasty, the imperial buildings such as the Summer Palace and the Temple of Heaven, designed by one large architect family, Yang Shilei, they honor the name of the Lei family, reflected many standards as described in the book. However, it only gained importance among the scholars until 1919. Zhu Qiqian, a scholar, architect, and a learned official, realized the scientific value in it. A decade later, he founded a famous architect organization, 营造学社, Society for the Study of Chinese Architecture. He invited famous architects such as Liang Sicheng and Liu Dunzhen, and together led many field research and literature studies in the early to mid-20th century. The collected data and the record in the wartime were the cornerstone of the Chinese ancient architecture studies and helped the preservation of many cultural heritages ever since. The history in Chinese architecture since 20th century can be divided into two periods. In the early 20th century, the contact of the Western world brought in many colonial-style buildings in coastal cities. After the foundation of People's Republic of China, the concept of nationalism became dominant, and it's easy to see in large constructions the engraved influence from traditional Chinese buildings with well-marked grand roof or exquisite Chinese patterns. Being long influenced by the Chinese gardening concepts, Tongjun avoided the apparent resemblance and designed many buildings with simplified yet elegant Chinese features. The reform and opening up turned over a new page for Chinese architectures, and the Chinese culture is blended in the architecture in more creative ways. In 2012, Chinese architect Wang Shu won the Pulitzer Architecture Prize. His most famous design is the Ningbo History Museum in Ningbo, south of Shanghai, built in 2008 using recycled bricks from other buildings. He was praised by the Pulitzer jury for work that blends traditional Chinese elements with modern lines and attention to the environment. Wang Shu spent a number of years working on building sites to learn traditional skills. His unique combination of traditional understanding, experimental building tactics, and intensive research defines the basis for his studio's architectural projects. Thank you for listening to today's lecture. Goodbye.